So, good evening, and welcome along to another big music show here on NVTV. Coming up on the show this week, we'll be finding out about a special music event called Jam for Jackie, which is a special tribute evening to the late great Jackie Flavelle, who passed away just over a year ago. And Jackie's daughter Lisa will be with us in the studio. We'll also have some live music from Joby Fox, and starting things off, it's hard to believe that it's just over 2 years since the late great Bap Kennedy passed away. Bap's wife Brenda will be joining us in the studio shortly to tell us about a new EP of previously unreleased material of Bap's called Love Hurts. But before that, we're going to dig into the archives and show you a great live performance of Bap in these very studios back in 2009.
When we were young, we had it all. We had each other till we heard our freedom call. And even though I let you go, darling, it hurt me more than you will ever know. So here I stand, entirely free. Only my freedom, it don't mean a thing to me. I'd rather be entirely yours. Years have gone by and still my love for you endures. So long ago, you went away. I was to wait for you when you'd be back someday. What can I do? What can I say? Your empty promises, they seem so far away. So here I stand, entirely free. Only my freedom, it don't mean a thing to me. I'd rather be entirely yours. Years have gone by and still my love for you endures. All our ideas got in the way. We got our freedom, but we had a price to pay. Life has moved on. Don't say I'm wrong. Don't ever blame me that I chose to move along. So here I stand, entirely free. Only my freedom, it don't mean a thing to me. I'd rather be entirely yours. Years have gone by and still my love for you endures. So here I stand, entirely free. Only my freedom, it don't mean a thing to me. I'd rather be entirely yours. Years have gone by and still my love for you endures.
So good to see that performance once again from our archives, Bap Kennedy and his wife Brenda. And Brenda Kennedy joins me now in the studio. Brenda, how are you?
I'm well, thank you, Robin.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
It's been a while.
It's been ages, hasn't it? Yeah, we were just trying to work out when it was.
2009, I think.
This is the same year as the Love Hurts, interestingly.
And that's what we're here to talk about today, the Love Hurts CD that you're releasing.
Yeah.
So tell us how this whole Love Hurts thing came about. How did you discover these tracks?
I went to Rod's studio, Rod McVeigh, that we did a lot of work with, and it was him that bound it and let me hear it. And it just took me right back, because you forget things that you do.
Yeah.
And it did knock me back, to be honest, emotionally at the time, quite a bit. There's something about music, it can get you. And I took a few weeks to sort of process it and wondered what I should do with it. And then it crossed my mind to put it out as a single. And then it sort of went from there, because if you go into all the trouble, as you know, like putting out a single, there's a lot of work actually.
Yeah.
It made sense while I'm doing all that to put some other tracks with it. And then I thought that it would be good to use it to raise money for Marie Curie.
Yes.
And it all sort of came together and seemed to make sense, and it's all worked very well, because it's had fantastic support, really great feedback. And the thing about it is, it's not an ordinary music CD.
Yeah.
The Love Hurts is obviously a music, but most of a lot of the CD is really about Bap the man.
There's part of an interview on this CD as well, and of course Bap was very ill at the time when this interview was done.
He was, although you wouldn't really know from listening to it. At the time, it was Ralph McLean came out, and he came to the house because Bap wasn't well enough to go into the studio.
Yeah.
And but it was very important to Bap. He wanted to do the interview, and Ralph, he actually did the interview in 2 separate days and stages, and it did take a lot out of him. But as I say, it was very important to him. And also, I remember around that time there were Marie Curie nurses coming in overnight, and I remember they were lovely people, and I remember talking to one of the ladies around that time and saying how it's amazing, he's just done an interview.
Yes.
And that's very intense, and it was over an hour or whatever it was at the time. And I can't, what he's going through at the moment. She said to me, but people don't see the other 23 hours.
Yeah.
And I thought that really, really sums it up, because that bit, he really pulled out all the stops for that interview. You wouldn't really hear, although he actually broke down at one stage during, I think it was possibly the first hour of the interview. And it was because I think that, he'd done a lot of interviews in his life. And there's, these days you can find out a lot of things about people just by going on the internet.
Yeah.
But this thing about his Asperger's syndrome and his difficulties that he'd had, they were nowhere. Nobody knew, because he kept it completely private. And he knew that this was the only time that he was going to be able to do that. And he sort of stopped Ralph and said, I need to get real here, So that's the reason I selected that particular bit, because I knew it was so important to him. He wanted to get it out there, and he spoke so truthfully. I thought it was very engaging, what he said about Asperger's syndrome was the engine of his creativity.
Yeah.
And he talks frankly about the difficulties and so forth. But that's the reason, because he was always a very real kind of a guy, very authentic. And I just felt that it was important to get that out. So as I say, there is music on it, but it's very different. It's not like an ordinary, you're not buying it for something you just listen to as music. So, but the 2 music tracks, pure music tracks, are at the beginning. So if you don't want to listen to the rest, it's up to you. But saying that, also the other tracks were put together by Ralph McLean, and he's put music through them. So they're not just like so it's nicely done.
And I know the CD's been well received across the world. I mean, even I saw Mark Knopfler's been endorsing it, hasn't he?
That's right, which was really lovely. He, as you know, was a big supporter of Bap's, and they worked together a lot over the years, and he produced The Sailor's Revenge, one of Bap's, some people think it was a real masterpiece, that album. And, so Mark Knopfler had an awful lot of respect for him, which was very gratifying, Steve Earle was a big supporter as well. He was, and I believe he wants to re-release something as well, doesn't he? Yeah. He produced the very first solo album, Domestic Blues, and he would like to re-release that on vinyl, and hopefully that'll happen next year. And he's written some really, really lovely, very, 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 very lovely liner notes for the album. So, and you can hear from it's so sincere what he says about him.
So that's also very special. So it's just fantastic. And Van Morrison was very good to him as well.
Of course, yeah.
I know he told me about, Bap told me about him just letting him come to the studio, to his Van Morrison's own studio, to record the big picture, which was so generous and kind of him, you know, and you know, so it's lovely.
So Brenda, I just wanted to ask you, how did you and Bap meet?
We met, there's a few versions of this, but the real version is we met when I was giving a talk about Asperger's syndrome in Glengall Street in Belfast, and he turned up as listening to the talk, and at the end of the talk, the girl that was giving the talk came and said to me, would you like to meet Bap Kennedy? And I actually didn't know him. and she said, I think he'll be able to help you. It was a sort of interesting, you know, prophetic thing. Probably for both of us, we helped each other. And he, at the time, my son, who has Asperger's syndrome, was trying to get into playing the guitar, but it was very hard to get, you know, the right teacher or the right help for him. And she said that he's really good with kids with Asperger's syndrome. That's my introduction to him. At the time, he was going through a bit of a difficult time in his life. He had actually stepped away from music. And he was going through this whole thing on his own journey. I knew nothing of this at the time, but what he was doing really was to help. He was doing this, helping other kids, helping kids with Asperger's syndrome and autism. He was just encouraging them with music because he always greatly believed in the healing power of music, and he was really good at it. I mean, I was also working in the NAS, National Autistic Society, at the time, so we ended up kind of being a bit of a team working together on Asperger's syndrome. Originally, just we were working together on that. And then he was helping my son. It became a friendship. Then he discovered that I loved music, you know, although he didn't actually, it was a bit taboo. He did not want to talk about his own music at the time because of his own thing. And he discovered that I had loved music when I was younger and had sort of given it up because of various reasons. He was like, you're telling all these other people about that and you're not doing it yourself. And then he asked me about, I said I used to enjoy writing songs, and he said, well, for next week I want you to, you know, when he was sort of taking this role. And then I kind of thought, well, I can't. And then he liked my songs. He said, I want to record those. We went into Rod's, which is where we kind of got together with Rod. And we did my album, you know, you probably remember that way back in the day. We did all that. And at the end of the album, that was going to be it. And he was like, well, do you want to come and sing do some backing vocals for me? Do you want to, you know? And we ended up, it just was obvious where it was heading, you know? So it was a bit of a journey.
Oh, you know? But it was a great journey, and you and him were so close.
We were close. Everybody said they never, not everybody, but an awful lot of people said they never saw one without the other.
Exactly.
And it was from the very start. It really was. Even at the very start, it was like, you know, even though at the very start we weren't together, it was constantly emailing, constantly texting, you know, communicating. And then once we got together, I remember there was a girl in Hollywood, we used to love going for coffees and stuff like that, where we're great. Neither of us drank because of, you know, Bap's issues with drink, and I gave up drink too then, you know, so we were both the same. But we did love going in for the coffees and all that. And I remember there was a girl in Hollywood after he died, and she came over and she said to me, I have never actually seen one of you without the other before. And I thought that really sums it up, because they just saw us. We were always like, you know, he used to say we're joined at the hip, you know. One
of my greatest memories will always be Christmas Eve 2009. I was doing the evening radio show into Christmas Day, and yourself and Bap came in, performed live in the studio, did Moonlight Kiss live. And then
I can't remember the details.
And then did a lovely version of Silent Night. As we came up to midnight into Christmas. Really, really good memories.
I remember going in, you know, I remember it was lovely, you know, and I know that Bap was very fond of you as well, you know, so it was lovely.
It was always good to have him on the TV or on the radio show. We all have our lovely memories. We're going to show some more in a second from the archives. Brenda, if people want to get their hands on Love Hurts, how do they do that?
BapKennedy.com. It's really simple. It's dead simple. Couldn't be easier. It's just on the homepage.
And every penny's going to Marie Curie,
every
of course,
penny,
as well.
Every penny. And Bap's sister Marion has paid for half of the outlays. I paid for the other half, so everything's covered. So every penny will go to Marie Curie.
Brenda, it's been lovely seeing you.
Okay, great to see you.
As always, and we're going to delve into the archives once again, and here's another great performance from the late, great Bap Kennedy.
Leave behind your worries, really very small. Come with me, set sail with me on the mighty ocean. Alcohol. sail around insanity. I've heard those demons call. Once or twice I have been capsized on the mighty ocean. Alcohol on the mighty ocean. Alcohol. I lost my darling brother. I watched him slowly fall. As he hit the spray, he was swept away on the mighty ocean. Alcohol on the mighty ocean. Alcohol. So leave behind your worries, really very small. Come with me, set sail with me on the mighty ocean. Alcohol on the mighty ocean. Alcohol. This world is crazy. This world is crazy. And I know there's so many different ways we can live in this world. And I know I can't do it living without you. This world is crazy to me. Guide me by the light of your love through the wars and the raging sea. Don't let me drown, don't let me drown, don't let me drown in a world of fear, in a world of fear of mediocrity. And ooh, you and I were meant to be together. We crossed the raging seas. Yeah, 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 yeah. This world is crazy to me. Hold my hand and we shall live again in the sunshine on the shore. Don't look back, don't look back, no, don't look back, 'cause we're the lovers from the war. And ooh, you and I will look into the future. We crossed the raging seas. Yeah, 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 yeah. This world is crazy to me.
So that's a song called This World is Crazy from Joby Fox, who joins me now in the studio. Joby, how are you, sir?
Dead on, Robin. Good to see you, man.
Good to see you, as always.
Yeah.
Tell us about that song. What's the background to that?
the last 3 years I've been working down in Greece, you know, during the refugee crisis. We run a charity there called Refugee Rescue. And, you know, I first went down there nearly 3 years now. And it's just, as an artist and as a songwriter, your experiences sort of permutate, you know, in your art, really, and that's what the song's really about. It's about how crazy this world really is.
And of course, you know, from being out there and stuff, you must have experienced some dangerous stuff out there as well.
Well, you do, but not you know, sort of, you know, the refugees themselves are the people that are out there in the danger zone, really. And of course, we see it every day. Our team sees it every day, the search and rescue teams, and so, you know, the refugees will come across the sort of perilous journey, and you know, they'll go on.
Yes,
but we're there. We see a lot of same things happening day in and day out, sort of thing. You know, so.
So I know you've been busy with that. So when have you actually had time to sit down and actually write songs? Because I know there's a new album coming out soon.
That's right. That's right. And I'm really up for it. I went to America there. Went to Woodstock, upstate New York. I spent a month there. Myself and Sophie and Rory, my child, and a wee log cabin there, and just put most of the songs together there and put the finishing touches, and you know, so I had a month out there writing, which was great to get that space to do that. You know, it was stonking hot, like, and it was, but it was a fantastic experience, like, being up there in the Catskill Mountains.
So when can we get to hear this new album then?
Well, I'm hoping that by February. So I wrote this song a few years ago called I Love You. Yes. So I wrote this other song called I Love You. Yes. So I says I'll write this song, I'll sort of package it like, I'll do a double A side of I Love You, the previous one.
Which you sang at my wedding.
That's right. Yes. So there you go. That's it. That's right. That's when I was exclaiming my love for you. A bit awkward, wasn't it? It was a bit awkward. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I'm going to sort of package it, I Love You and I Love You Too. No, not the band. You know, that's what I'm going to do. So I just want to get it out in the public, and that's it. Yeah. Let's put it that way.
Now, Joby, earlier on we were talking to Brenda Kennedy, who was then telling us about the Love Hurts EP, a tribute to the late great Bap Kennedy, who I know was somebody you were very close to over the years. What's your memories of Bap?
Well, you know, to say that I was close to Bap is an understatement of the century. You know, we grew up together in the streets of West Belfast, and we all, you know, learnt the guitar together and all the rest of it. So we moved to London years later, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, Bap started a band called Energy Orchard. Some of the best times of my life I've spent with Bap Kennedy. And, you know, we ended sort of with, you know, a wee bit of a sour note at the end of Energy Orchard, but then we got it together a few years later and, you know, let that just go in the past. Typical rock and roll story, you know, we're sort of Spinal Tap sort of job, you know. But me and Bap, you know, he was a friend, and he was a very, very talented man. Yeah. Very, very talented man. It's still painful, you know, to think about him, and a bit of surreal, to be honest with you. But it's a kick in the teeth, really, all of that, you know, because you just expected him to always be there, and you know, and you know, even in my writing now, I think about what would he do, and I'm sure he thought the same, because we were very, very close. We were very kind of lived in the same house, and you know, just talk music all the time and everything, you know, and he was very, very funny guy. Very, very funny, kept me amused. Well, we amused each other.
Well, Joby, thank you for sharing your memories of Bap, and good to see you as always. You're going to do one more song before you go?
Yes.
What are you going to do this time?
It's called I Love You Too, not the band.
We'll have a listen to this. Joby, thank you. So here we go with I Love You Too, not the band.
I was coming home from around the bend. You said you lost your mind, but you were on the mend. Then you can skip an interview. I know it didn't make much sense, but I loved you. You said you couldn't take another fall. You said you had no time for me at all. Now you're my lover, you're my friend. I know that love will never end. You're so sweet, you're so true. That's why I say I love you. We got a flat of Queens and set the tight, making love to each other night after night, while all the pictures tumbled off the walls, and all the neighbors heard us, but you didn't curve at all. Wasn't only mornings had come, and you right there, you're the one. Now you're my lover, you're my friend, and I know that love will never end. You're so sweet, you're so true. That's why I say I love you. Now sitting here on a summer's day, the children play. Think about the time to me that seems so far away. There's still a flame that burns inside, burns inside. Open up my heart to you and cry. Oh, you're my lover, you're my friend. I know that love will never end. You're so sweet, you're so true. That's why I say I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. Sophie, I love you.
In my time I've won and I've lost. I made my way from country to country across. I have known riches, I've been on the losing end of time. And I've been in love as sharp as a razor shine. And although I may have lost sight of where I'm going, my father told me to give a hand while you can give it, and live a life where you can live it. If you hang it on a string, you'll watch it fall. Never raise a glass to someone's sorrow, never talk about tomorrow. And if the hangman comes to have you on the stalk, you tell him all, tell him all, tell him all. I seen you dancing in your bare feet from wall to wall. Your souls were black with dirt from the village hall. And your hair made love to the waves of the radio. Every song you ever knew and sang slow. And although I may have lost sight of where I'm going, my father told me to give a hand where you can give it, and live a life where you can live it. If you
So that's a track from Kieran Lavery, who's just one of many local musicians taking part in an event called Jam for Jackie, which is taking place at the OES Centre on the 8th of November. It's a special evening, a tribute evening to the late great Jackie Flavelle that passed away just over a year ago. And Jackie's daughter Lisa joins me now in the studio. So Lisa, welcome. Hard to believe it's just over a year ago since we lost your dad.
Yeah, I know. It's been a crazy year. It's gone by very fast, and even though it's over a year ago, I'm still getting people coming up to me and saying, oh, I haven't seen you since your dad died and whatever. So it's been overwhelming in a way, the kind of outpouring of affection and respect that there's been for him. So
we've got this big night coming up, Jam for Jackie, which I see from the lineup, lots of great musicians, lots of local talent on the bill. And of course, your dad was somebody who always supported the young and upcoming singers, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. I mean, as well as having great relationships and friendships with the older musicians, he also loved to encourage younger talent, and not just actually in the fields of jazz and blues, but in the world of contemporary music as well. So we're delighted that Kieran Lavery is coming along to play at the special night. Dad was very pleased to play on one of Kieran's EPs towards the end of his career, and other younger players as well, like Suzanne Savage and Lewis Smith, people that were always encouraged by my dad, you know, to have a go.
And of course, he's also getting the Oh Yeah Lifetime Achievement Recognition Award as well.
Yes, I mean, the Legend Award, I can't believe that. I mean, it is sad that he's not going to be here to collect it himself, and he's in amazing company, the likes of Henry McCulloch, his old pal, Ash, Stiff Little Fingers. I know the award was given posthumously to Gary Moore as well, so there's some amazing names. I think there'd be two sides to my dad. One would be the kind of dismissive, oh, this is ridiculous, man, you can't give this to me, or whatever. But the other side, I think, would actually be touched, you know, and that's nice.
So I know you were very close to your dad and went to the gigs and went to his radio shows and stuff over the years. What was life like growing up with Jackie Flavelle?
Never boring. Dad had a great sense of humour, and I don't know if it's because he had a tough life when he was younger. I mean, Dad...
He lost both his parents at a young age, didn't
he was an only child and a sickly child. His mum died when he was only 6 months old of tuberculosis. His dad was a serving soldier and died in the Battle of Anzio in the Second World War in 1944. So by the time my dad was 5, he had no mum, no dad, no siblings. Just was really brought up by the extended family, and his Uncle Billy from North Belfast, Billy Flavelle, was in charge of the local flute band, and that's where Dad got his first instruction in the world of musical instruments. But his love for music just blossomed from there, and he very quickly was into the skiffle scene, into the show band scene, and before we had time to draw breath, off into the international jazz scene, you know.
I know we have some photographs from the early days here from the skiffle scene that we'll show in the screen at the minute. He was leaving school at lunchtimes and things to go and join the skiffle groups, wasn't he?
He told me the first gig he ever did, they had escaped from Inst in their school uniforms to go to the Rinka and perform a gig in their lunch break. But I think there's no doubt that the kind of the appreciation from the crowd and the camaraderie of the other musicians were the two things that actually sustained my dad through his whole life, right to the end, you know. And being a member of that kind of broad family is something that has always meant a lot to him.
And then of course, like many musicians, the show bands came along, and he was part of the Dave Glover show band, who's probably the biggest show band in the country at that stage.
I mean, Dad explained it to me at the time. I mean, he'd done the kind of skiffle grips, and he played a bit with the Witnesses and some other Johnny Quigley and some other of the show bands. But he described to me that getting the job with Dave Glover was like getting the job with the Beatles, man. You know, in local terms, this was, I mean, they were stars. And you know, the thing about the quality of the bands in those days was just awe-inspiring. I mean, they sounded as good as the records, and the records were made in recording studios with, you know, hundreds of pounds spent on them, and these performers were just world class, and they knew how to work the audience, how to keep them dancing, and I think all the skills that were learnt in the show band days were wonderful training, in fact, for an international career.
And then, of course, the London years came along, and Chris Barber, I mean, working with a legend like Chris Barber and Otley Patterson in that band as well, that must have been an amazing experience for him.
Yeah, I think he loved the experience of just being in London at that time. You know, the Barber band were highly sort of respected by all the rock and rollers, so they'd be hanging out in the Marquee and the 100 Club, and, you know, Rod Stewart and the Faces would be there and the Stones would be there, and, you know, there was this whole kind of family of contemporary musicians who had just come out of the blues, you know, and so that scene in London was meant to be fantastic. And also they were big friends with a lot of the motor racing people. He was very good friends with Mike Hailwood and spent a lot of time, you know, with the kind of motor racing rock and rollers as well, and they just had a great time living in London.
And we've mentioned Henry McCulloch already. Of course, he was good friends with the late great Henry as well.
Absolutely, and of course Henry had his many years in London playing with the finest, and that was the other thing about Dad. He never had the green-eyed monster. He loved seeing local musicians do well. He loved the fact Henry played at Woodstock and got the gig with Wings. You know, he just loved it. He loved to see Van doing brilliantly, and he always kind of held up other musicians that were from here and wanted to see them do well, you know.
So he had this great career in London, and then he decided when you were very young to come back to Northern Ireland, didn't he?
I mean, my sister had just been born, and I think the realities of raising a young child in London with a musician husband on the road was kind of, you know, giving my mum mixed feelings. So they decided they would come back. Came back to Donegal, but of course leaving music behind was never going to be an option. He actually came back and started working in Salmon and Pierce, and there was still a music connection, and then shortly afterwards started working in downtown, and obviously kept the live playing going, running the jazz and blues clubs and all the bit.
So then came his great career on downtown radio, and that's obviously what made you want to become a broadcaster then. Yeah,
the magic of those days of radio. I mean, for a start, the broadcasters were of superb quality. They were really entertaining. The magic of the live, you know, the going live, and I just learnt so much about radio in those days.
And we've got some great photographs appearing on screen now. We've got that great photograph that's just popped up of your dad with Hendy. And your dad's looking cool in that photograph. Hendy's looking like a school teacher in the photograph.
The first wave of DJs, yes, school teacher Hendy. This is how you do this is how you be a disc jockey. But I mean, all the characters from those days, they had great fun. And that was the thing about the radio as well. It was great fun. And the fun came across. You know, the audience could hear the fun, you know, and that was definitely part of it.
Is it true that he once auditioned to be in The Doors?
Yes, it is true, but I have to say it's after Jim Morrison had passed away, and The Doors were figuring out what they were going to do next. So apparently Dad got some call from Ray Mansorex saying, will you come and audition? And they were going to put us up on a ranch in California or something. No, Mum wasn't wearing that either, so that didn't happen. That was a big no from Noreen, I think.
So we've got the big night on the 8th of November. You must be looking forward to this.
I am looking forward to it. There's a lot of people travelling for the gig, people that have played with my dad over the years, some of his closest and dearest friends, people going as far back as his school days, and people that he's played with much more recently, including some of the recent members of the Barber band. So yeah, it's going to be a great opportunity. It's going to be emotional as well, you know, but it's going to be it's going to be a celebration, and that's really important. It's just, you know, it's sad Dad can't be there to take the award himself, but I'm certainly happy to do it on his behalf.
Brilliant. Well, Lisa, thank you for joining us on the show, and have a great night on the 8th of November.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you. And we'll finish the show this week with another one of the artists who are taking part in Jam for Jackie. This time it's Chris Taplin. We'll see you next week.